Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenMara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And today I would like to offer a little bit of a book review for you. And it's a book that I've had for a minute or two, we'll call it that. But it's called Dancing with Dragons, Invoking Their Ageless Wisdom and Power. It is a book by DJ Conaway. I do like a lot of her Celtic and dragon literature. She passed away a few years ago. Mainly because she looks at stuff from a different perspective, and she actually kind of puts a personality with the dragons. It's not just they are out there spiritual entities. That's yes, but there also is a way to communicate with them. And this one is actually kind of a fun book because it gives you a little bit of the history of dragons, and how they compare through different cultures, hydras and nagas, and some of the more Eastern beliefs that go along with them. Because if you've ever looked much into a lot of the Eastern philosophies, the Chinese and Tibetan, and a little bit into the Vietnamese. Not as much there. It's still there. Don't get me wrong, but you'll see a lot like Emperor Key harnessing dragon power, and there's a few different ones where they talk about in that culture different emperors or immortals from back in the day who would descend from the heavens riding a dragon. And so you've got a lot of lore that goes along with that. So she kind of glances through this. I mean, the book's only, where are we at? Should have looked at this first, sorry. It's 285 pages, give or take. So I'm not counting the index. So it's not like it's super long, so that she kind of gets to the point. She gives you a brief introduction. Some of the cultures, there's always a lot more. You can always research into some of these, especially dragons. There's such a broad history there, which kind of makes you wonder if they're real or not, considering every culture has one. But it goes into what the term dragon's breath within the earth is. Ley lines could be seen as dragon lines. You can also see feng shui as a way of the dragon energy within a house. So she talks a little bit about that. Matter of fact, that was my first introduction to feng shui in that aspect. Was I think it was in her book or this book or another one of hers, but she talks about how that's kind of the dragon energy within your home, which makes sense in that aspect. So, being a general book on a form of Wicca, we get into our ritual tools. She uses a standing brazier, your magical book or grimoire or book of shadows, whichever term you like. There's incense burners and a sword. Your ritual dagger, which is a little different than an athame in this particular vein of Wicca. And then you also have your staff or wand. And then, the general one, you have to have your chalice. She uses a pentacle, but she recommends making your own of this one, not just having someone else's version of it, because it really imbues your energy into the earth stone. And this is her basic design that she puts out for it. And like I said, it's kind of fun. When I first got this one, I actually went through, and I do this with certain authors. She's one of them. I went through and basically tried everything as I went through the book. So you'd read through the ritual, then I would go ahead and practice it. And it gives you a different perspective, especially with her work, on what it all means. Excuse me. To work with dragon energy. And a lot of these tools, once you kind of get your own basics for them, the wand, the chalice, the athame, or ritual dagger, if you use swords, it's not always a requirement, or stabs, those are other things you can add in. Once you kind of have them, basically you just keep adding energy into them, so you don't have to have separate sets, unless you're working with a different form. Most Wicca stuff, you can use the same tools throughout. There's another branch of metaphysics or magic that you definitely want to have their own tools for. Just err on the side of caution. We won't go into that right now. But she talks about what is your magical dragon personality, talks about how to develop your numerical value based off of your birth, which gives you your focused energy of like kind of where you're at as a person. You can do this for your name as well, which gives you the energy that you put front, and then there's another one where you can look at your subconscious energy, but your birth date is kind of the core aspect of who you are. So she talks about those, and then I like this. Not everyone does this in a lot of the metaphysics. It's 1 through 9, which is your general numbers, but you also have number 11, because that is a very unique number. It is, as far as numerology goes. And she also, not sure why I'm having issues tonight. Anyway, sorry. Also goes into the energies of 22, which is 2 11s. When you really get into that from a broader metaphysical standpoint, those two numbers, 11 and 22, even though they equal 2 and 4, they do not have the same energy signature. And so she actually breaks them down as these particular numbers equal out to something completely different, which is actually very true. Crowley talks about those a lot in his work as well. But then you get into a basic dragon ritual, which is how you can first introduce yourself to the dragons, and also maybe catch one of theirs attention and develop a working relationship with them. And that is on page 15. With this particular ritual, you want to make sure that you have a place where you can work out loud. The dragons will communicate with you, especially in this aspect, in a mental capacity, but it's better if you can talk, if you can speak out loud, which allows you to focus outside, not just be listening to, the voices that you can conjure in your own mind, imagination, things like that. It's easier if you are doing this out loud, because it helps you get out of your head, which is huge. Again, when you do this ritual, it's recommended to have your basic tools, which is your chalice, your pentacle, wand, and athame. Anything else you want to add in there is fine from her list here. And from personal experience with working with her rituals, it's actually a lot more fun to work with them if you're using natural lighting. So if you're outdoors somewhere, like if you go camping, this is a great book to use that for, which is one of the rituals in here. I did camping one time. But the other one is to have candles, to use sunlight, or moonlight. Moonlight works really well too. You just don't like all the artificial lights that we have anymore. If we could go back to incandescent bulbs, it would be even better, because they're more natural. But like LEDs and the CFLs, you're going to interfere with a lot of the subtler energies that you're working with. And especially when you first start out with this, go back to nature, go back to as raw as you can. Get candles, go outside where the sun is, or the moon, work with that kind of energy primary, and notice the difference in your results when you do that. Anyway, sorry. But it does give a really fun little ritual work. And then she kind of goes into, once you have kind of connected with one of the dragons, what kind did you connect with? And she goes into the different elements, earth, air, fire, water, which actually helped deepen a lot of my interest in those energies as well. And when I've worked with the different elemental energies, generally you're working with like the undines, the salamanders, the gnomes, and the sylphs, but you can also really tap into the energy of dragons through the 4 elements. And in a lot of ways, especially if you're more drawn to the elements, this is a much faster route to connect with the dragons. And she gives little rituals in here of ways to call out to them, like the king of the dragons of air. You would be calling out to Ceres, and you'd be calling out to Naylan for the queen of dragons of water. And she gives you a little bit of information, but at this point in the book, once you've gotten to this point, because we're halfway through or so, give or take, there we are, and she's DJ is trying to encourage you at this point to reach out and make the contact yourself. She's giving you baselines, and I like this about her, and there's a few other authors I've read like hers, and Silver Ravenwolf was the other one. I did a video on her Solitary Book of Shadows, where we're going to show you the tools. We're going to give you the baselines. We're going to draw the picture out on paper. You're the one that has to color it. So we're not going to give you all the details. We're going to show you the outline, and it's time for you to have some experiences, which really, to me, empowers you on your spiritual journey, because it's not, well, so and so said I should have this experience. How personal is that? I mean, in all honesty, it's just like with tarot and oracle readings. When you're doing a one-on-one, it can get really personal. When you're doing generals, you're getting a lot of other information, but the core thing is this is information that is a snapshot in time for you. What you do with it is your experience, and that's what you're doing with this, is you're trying to connect into this energy where you get to have these experiences yourself. There is a section for each of the realms that the dragons work in, the dragons of the seas and various waters. Little side note on that one. I actually was working with this book pretty heavily at one point in time, just because I love dragons, and of course I was curious. And I was out in the woods, of course, where else are you going to be? And I was sitting next to the stream. It's a year-round stream. It's this little trickle. It never actually gets big. It's just this little dinky stream. And I decided I was going to work on some meditation, just kind of get quiet, and I became very heavily aware of the guardian of that stream. Like, little dude was sitting on a rock watching me. And I was meditating, so I was seeing him in the astral. But it was an interesting connection at that point, and I actually learned what the dragons called that river. And I was poking around a little bit because there's a lot of people that I talked to over years. The name that he gave the river was something that had been referenced years ago, like decades, if not centuries ago, that had been forgotten. They called it something completely different at the current moment. But the dragon knew the old name, and that's what the dragon referenced the little water body by. So you'll learn stuff through the dragons that, especially if you resonate in that environment, that you may not learn in other places. So it's kind of fun in that respect. There's the dragons of the mountains and forests, which mountain dragons are a little different. They're a little more intense. I again practicing, wanting to understand. The forest ones I didn't connect with as well, but I did connect with some mountain ones one time, and the way they communicate, the tone, it vibrates your bones. It wasn't like this. Some of them they'll talk and you can hear it. It's not like this ears, it's telepathic ears. But the mountain dragons, you feel them when they speak. It's like when you're around someone who has a really deep bass voice that kind of vibrates your bones when you hear it. Amplify that. That's what the mountain dragons are, because they are very deep, very strong, very grounded. But they're actually very wise, and they're not like evil or scary. They can be because they're big, but it's actually really interesting to communicate with them. You also have the desert and arid regions. Then there's the interesting ones of the dragons that are fire dragons, the volcano dragons, which I've never actually connected with the volcano aspect as much as I would like to, and I've tried. I think it would be fun in some ways to go to somewhere like in Washington State where they had, Mount St. Helens, and then, or something on one of like the Hawaiian Islands or something like that, and actually go to one of these inactive volcanoes and see if you can reach out. And it would just be fun to have that experience once, type of a thing. Then she goes into a section on guardian dragons, how to call one in, how to work with it, what's expected on both sides, because a lot of people forget that when we work with the spiritual world, a lot of the times, especially the angelic choirs and stuff, it's ask, say thank you, say thank you, say thank you, but that's about the give and take. You might have some work you have to do along the way. With the dragons, it's usually a little bit more like, yeah, we're going to help with this. Here's what you have to do. We will guide this, but we're not doing all the work for you. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of refreshing because not everyone sees it that way, but that's how she brings it forward. You also go into the dragons for the different planets. If you work with some of the more ceremonial mysticism, there's the intelligences of the planet, there's the wisdoms of the planet, and then there's the I just lost the other term. But there's like 4 different energies that attach to each planet if you look at the planetary sigils and seals. So when you add in the dragons, you can really amplify how to connect with these different planets. There's the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. She goes through the base. She doesn't go out onto the outer ones, but she leaves the door open. because this is what she has discovered, what she figured out. Well, what happens if you want to connect to the dragons of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, some of the dragon of Chiron? I'm sure there's probably one attached if you wanted to go digging. Vesta, some of the other celestial bodies within our solar system. Her thing with this book was to say, here's the introduction. Here's how to open the door. Where do you go with it from there is your decision, which is, like I said, it's a lot of fun. Then she goes into the zodiac. Again, that was my I don't deal well with the zodiac, so that was a huge struggle for me. But it did help you understand a little bit more about what energies are at play with each of the signs. Is it a fully comprehensive? No. Let's pick one here. Let's do Sagittarius. It is about 20 lines. It's notes of how to work with these different energies. So Sagittarius, you'd be doing it in broad daylight, the hour of Jupiter, during a waxing moon or a full moon. And with these type of energies, you really want to pay attention to where the moon is, especially it's a Wicca ceremony, so that's why moon. But where the moon is really how successful you're going to be at these rituals, because some of these planets have a very positive aspect in the waxing moon, and you're going to go through some shadow work and deal with some hell if you hit it in the waning moon. So work with the waxing first. Goes through the colors of the energies that go along with the dragons. For Sagittarius, it would be purple and deep blues, which are your dragon scale colors. Sometimes you'll have combinations, which are beautiful. The ruling planet of Sagittarius is Jupiter. That's interesting. Stone is turquoise. Flower is the narcissus, which kind of fits with those of you who know Sagittarius. The description of this type of dragon energy: they're outspoken, they love freedom, they're independent, they're outgoing, they're spiritually oriented, pretty athletic, very opportunistic. Fits. And then she gives a chant to summon or call out to the dragon. And you'll have to get the book to read that. Then it goes through the actual final ritual, and that is where she describes the concept of dancing with dragons. This is where you actually get into that ritual state. You work your basic ritual, you call in the dragons, and then you let your energy flow with them. It's a little intense the first couple of times you do it, but once you start getting into that flow, you realize that the power that they bring in is impressive for us, that type of stuff. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I've practiced. This is one that I have done. Quite a few of pretty much everything in this book. I went through the entire book and practiced all of them at some point. But the point is with this one is, if you're looking to take a deeper aspect, you want to kind of introduce dragons into your life, or you've been obsessed with them, like some of us are, and you want to actually understand more of the spiritual side of them, this is an amazing book. It's pretty simple. It's pretty basic. It's not going to give you, like I said, the ins and outs of all of the mysteries of the universe. It's going to say, here's how you open the door, and here's who to talk to when you get in the other side. Where you go from there is up to you. And so that's why it's a basic introduction to the dragons, but it's a good way to kind of start making those initial connections. And the way she lays things out, it's pretty straightforward. As far as spirituality goes, it's relatively safe. You can it can go dark, be careful, but it is something that is a lot of fun to play with, and it's interesting to see the different energy fields. Like I said, a lot of us work with angels frequently where you're comfortable, but if dragons have always been kind of your thing, like if you've read George and the Dragon Slayer back in the day, or Pete's Dragon and things like that, all these fun dragon ones, this might be a branch of Wicca that you might want to look into just to see how you feel with it. With that, I will let you guys go. Have a great rest of your day and week. If you've worked with this book before, or you've checked it out, let me know in the comments down below. I'm kind of curious to see who else even knows this book exists, and what your experiences have been, if you're comfortable with sharing that. Like, subscribe, do all those fun things, and I will see you in the next video.